All right, welcome everybody. Today, as you can see, I have a guest. Her name is Danielle Crocker, and I wanted to get her opinion specifically about like the dating world. She has an interesting story too. She's been selling engagement rings for about 20 years. And if you're familiar with the manosphere at all, you know Better Bachelor. He had the same experience too. He sold engagement rings for years, and he kind of got red pilled that way. So I'll be curious to hear Danielle's perspective on that side. But before we went live here, we were just talking about like men aren't turned off by independent women, but they are turned off by masculine energy and attitude from a woman. So what do you think about that? Like, I know you commented on that post that I made. So what were your thoughts about it?
I know from my own personal, what I said on your post was how you have two different women where you open the door for one and she's like, "Oh my God, thank you." And then you open the door for the other woman. She's like, "I got it." That's like that's to me like the short term of what you were saying about the attitude, where I am an independent woman, but I do like a more masculine man, and I know that I want to be more humble in that type of situation where you open the door for me. Like, I am very grateful that you did that for me.
Right.
I don't have anything to prove. Like, I'm grateful, whatever it is.
Right. So I can sense already from the way you talk that you do have more of a feminine energy. And when I
Yes.
see women that have a masculine energy, usually they're very combative. They need to be right. I know we talked
Yeah.
about that the other day. And just overall, it's not pleasant and they're not very cooperative. Like every hill seems to be a hill to die on. And I think unfortunately a lot of these women, they've been taught like that's how they should be. And I have my theories as to why it's happened that way, right? A lot of them subscribe to like they're the strong independent woman thing, where they gotta like survive in the male world, and they develop masculine traits along the way because that's what they got to do. If you're going to survive in the world, especially doing those kinds of things, like yeah, you're going to develop your masculine. It is what it is. But then I think what happens is women don't know how to turn it off, and they're just that all the time. But you seem to have been able to, I guess, separate because you do sales, you sell engagement rings, but yet you're still feminine. So how did you manage that?
Uh, well, I've had moments where I was more masculine for sure. But because I had to be, like you're
Right.
talking about work or, buying myself a house again or things like that, where I had to like put myself in a little bit more of like a bitchy way that I usually would be to get what I needed at the time that I needed. And I'm not normally that type of person, but if something needs to be done, I don't have anyone to help me do that. So
Right.
I have to take on the role of two people, male and female, to do certain things like that. But then when it came to dating is when I can't say I necessarily knew how masculine I was until some time passed. And then I realized that I wanted to be more feminine, that I wanted to be treated like a, a, a girl with a man. Like, I wanted that, but I didn't know that actually until I
Right.
realized how masculine I was being.
So how would you say you were being masculine at the time?
Um, I don't know. I guess kind of saying like in the past, this is what we're going to be doing. Like,
So
this
you
is
take
what
charge.
we're, yeah. And that's actually, I am a boss at work. I love it. When I clock out, I don't want to be that. And I didn't know that I didn't want to be that until I was like 32. I wanted,
What what gave you the realization that you didn't want to be that?
I really, I got bored fast. I didn't really like saying, this is what I want us to do. I wanted someone to tell me this is what we should be doing. I wanted it so bad, but I didn't have that since I was a teenager, really, in a relationship type aspect.
Right. So I can see like a lot of men, they need to hear that because I think
Yes.
a lot of men are afraid to
Yes.
be like the masculine take charge kind of guy. And ultimately though, that is men's problem, right? That's not really women's problem. It is women's problem too, but it's men's problem first. Like they got to be that dude. They got to be that man that can take charge. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think there's nothing wrong for a woman to be able to look up to her man and say, you know
Yes.
what? I can be a person at work and be competent, but at home, I can still want my man to be the man. I want
Yes.
him to be the dude I look up to. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of women are kind of told to not do that. They say, oh no,
Yes.
you don't want to trust that dude. Dudes are
I
dangerous. Dudes are
Yep,
this.
yep, that's true, and it's not, I can't say, like, our parents teach us that. That's totally society. If you want it, you go out and get it. Well, I can get my car, I can get my house, I can get my jewelry, I can get my vacation, but I can't go out and get this man that wants to be with me. That's, like, actual different type of work that you just can't go and get,
Right.
and society doesn't teach you that either.
So where do you think you learned it though? Is it like a high school thing? Is it just like women in your life, like your peers,
That's
or
the
is it TV
multiple.
movies?
Well, reading a lot, meditation really helped me balance out myself
Okay.
a lot. Yeah. But like we talked about before, was going on, well, work, watching couples, and then me going out on so many dates because I took it as a numbers game. So
It is.
there has to be, if I go out with this many people, there has to be one that I'm gonna have the time of my life with, like I do with my friends. There has to be one.
Yeah, you would think so. But
Yeah.
I'm never surprised though in this day and age. There's so much access to other people, but somehow it doesn't seem easier to meet someone on your same wavelength. But before we get into that part, I kind of want to talk about like what did you learn from selling engagement rings over the years? Like what kind of couples would you see? And did like people come back later and like sell back engagement rings when it didn't work? Do you see that too?
Well, I've sold my ex-fiance a few engagement rings.
A few.
Yeah,
Oh Lord.
I did. Um, you can tell when couples belong together. Most couples that met in college, they most of them don't look like they're gonna last, and they usually, maybe 50% do. Young couples that were together a short period of time do not last. Older couples that were together a short period of time getting engaged do last. Um, it's all over the place, but you can tell when a man talks and they're there out of obligation. Maybe it's obligation because it's our 2-year anniversary. Their friends are really pressuring. The mom's saying this. She keeps sending me pictures, and I'm really not ready yet, but I want to make her happy. So those people, like, some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them break up, some of them come back together. But this you're just watching different behavior, and I'm also learning about, like, this took me a little bit later to learn, even though I'm witnessing all this behavior, was communicating from the beginning what your expectation is. I meet you today, we're dating, maybe we have this conversation in a month or so, but ultimately I would like to get married. I would like to get married before I'm 30. I would like to get married before I'm 25. I want to have kids at this time. A lot of couples don't do that at all. And I see that at work all the time. And like, they'll even not communicate about the kid thing, be married for a couple years, and then when it comes down to it, that's most people's life goal. They want to have children, so then they divorce because one doesn't, one does.
Okay. So I guess to probe further into that, is there anything you see in the couples that seem to work out with their body language or how they communicate with one another? Anything that kind of stands out to you?
Lots of smiling for sure.
Okay.
Even we always try to guess like how long couples are together, and um, a lot of times they'll look like they're kind of new, and we ask how long you guys been together, and they'll say something like 2-3 years, and I'm shocked. I would assume they're only together like 4 or 5 months because they are more touchy. They are so involved in each other's conversations. They're listening. They're giving feedback. They're showing that it's like really important to hear what each other's emotional triggers are, and that's one big thing that I noticed.
Okay. And do you notice like one partner more in charge than the other sometimes? Like, because I can
That's
know,
all over the place.
yeah, I bet. Because I mean, one of the things I like to do when I people watch, you look around and you see, okay, that woman, she's wearing the pants in that thing. She's telling that guy what to do left and right. And I actually think it's more rare to actually find the dude that's actually wearing the pants and the woman's looking up to him now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I
No,
think
that's
that's
right.
That's rare. And the couples that I see now that are married, often you just sense up that woman, she's running the ship. And I
Yeah,
know,
but I have couples, they're coming in for their 50-year anniversary, and she's still very stern, and she's still running the show, and she was that way when I first met her on the first date, like whatever the story is, right?
right.
And she's old, mom, everything mom says is right, like things like that. So I feel like that may have always been, but it is more popular now.
But so with a woman like that, is the guy a little more feminine or a little more submissive in that scenario? Or
I wouldn't call usually they're like older, so it's hard to tell. Definitely more submissive. Really there to make her happy.
right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but to me, part of being masculine is kind of having your mission and purpose in life first. Like you're on your mission, you have your goals, and that's what the man should have as his priority. If you ever read a book, you probably haven't, but it's called The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita. He says that a woman is able to trust a man the most when he has his mission and purpose first, because she doesn't want to be number one, because it kind of makes the woman uncomfortable. It's a lot of pressure for a woman to be number one. And I'm sure you've noticed it in your own dating life where there's a guy who seems like he gets obsessed with you and like he just smothers you, is clingy, all these negative things. And it's because where is his mission and purpose? Where is his primary thing that gets him going? A woman doesn't want to be your whole world, right? This
Mm-hmm.
would be a compliment, not the focus. That's always the red pill trope that they throw around. But it's very true. And so a lot of the guys who are like that, they're not living that part. And I think that's something that men aren't really taught that anymore, which is to the detriment of both. It's the detriment of men and women that they're not being taught that anymore. And unfortunately for a lot of men, a lot of this new age masculinity stuff is like, no, you actually just really need to be more like women, is what it comes down to. They say you need to be more emotional, more into your feelings. So, what do you think about that part? I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think about this new age masculinity where they're saying, you got to be more vulnerable, you got to be more in your feelings? So, what are your thoughts?
I don't like over emotion in male or female. Like, I think that it is so beautiful when people are in control of their emotions. With that being said, I don't know what you're thinking unless you tell me. So
Right,
if you're saying, Danielle, I'm falling in love with you, when that thought goes through your mind in a safe amount of time, then you say it. If I'm feeling it, I say it. Hey, I'm really digging what we have going on. Why are people not saying that? They're not saying it at all. And that's
right,
not being vulnerable, that's being transparent, really. That's not fair that people aren't saying how they're feeling when they
right.
meet people. So I don't see that as being feminine either. I think that's like what people lost a long time ago. It's like you have to push down how you feel and stop expressing yourself. When how do you know you're on the same course as someone else unless you say it? I'm having a great time. I'm really having a great time with you. Or I don't. I think this is horrible. We shouldn't be together.
Right. Well, I think there's a way to do it and own it that
Yeah.
doesn't come off in like a little feminine, bitchy kind of way. And that's kind of how it comes off when a lot of like Lewis Howes wrote a book called The Mask of Masculinity. I'm going to read it just to kind of see what it says. But
Okay.
I've got a feeling that it kind of just tells men to be more like women. I don't know that for sure, but I have a feeling that's what it is. And my argument against that kind of thing would be like a woman's programmed to want like the best mate for her, the strongest person that's going to be, evolutionarily speaking, the person that's going to provide her with the best offspring to go into the next generations. And so when you think of it through that prism and you're in the battle of life, like what kind of man will a woman want? The one that's all like emotional and in his feelings. Oh no, I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that. It's like, of course not. Like you want the dude that's going to be the rock. You want the dude that's going to know where he's going. He can take charge, but he's not going to be a dick about it. And I think that's where a lot of people conflate it. And they'll say, oh, no, the guy's just going to be the toxically masculine dude. But it's like, no, there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it and take charge and still like be good and still be like loving and caring. It's possible to do both. And so I'd always use that example. Like when shit hits the fan, the guy that's all stuck in his feelings, how is he going to be able to do what's best? Because to
Right.
me, the definition of courage is doing the right thing regardless of how you feel. And part of masculinity also is being able to take a step back and not always act emotionally and act more logically, which is, is traditionally more of a masculine trait. And women, traditionally are more in their emotions. They are more in their feelings. And there's nothing wrong with that though either. Like that's part of what a masculine dude would find attractive in a woman, that they're more in their feelings, they're a little more lighthearted, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. And I guess I try to talk about this to say that it's not wrong for a man to say, you know what, I can recognize my feelings. I can notice them. I'm not going to suppress them and say they're not there.
Yes.
But at the same point, say, you know what, it wouldn't be necessarily the best thing for me to act all this out in front of my woman. Like I always tell dudes, you don't want to tell your woman everything about like what's really going on in your heart. You got other dudes that have been in these situations before. They're going to be able to help you out in a way that your woman just couldn't, simply because she probably doesn't have experience with that from a male's perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's reality. And that's the same thing I say when women are teaching dudes like how to date. And I would say, dude, unless that girl's a lesbian, what experience does she have dating women?
Making a woman happy.
She got no experience with it. Like she knows like what she likes, but often I've noticed a lot of women, they're not able to articulate it really. Like they might
Yeah,
say,
but also I know what I love. That doesn't mean one of my girlfriends loves the same thing. So it's like
right,
would not be the best if I gave dating advice to a man.
okay. So circling back though to the selling of the engagement rings, we talked a little bit about what you see in the couples that did well. What about the couples that didn't do so well? You mentioned that some of them were trying to make other people happy, I guess,
Yes,
instead of
yes, very
themselves.
common. Yeah, that's
So
probably the most common.
okay, and usually that's what their own family or people that want grandkids or something.
So most common would be all of her friends are getting engaged. We've been to 7 weddings this year, and my mom's saying everyone's saying something, her mom's saying something, and I just feel so pressured to do this. That's what I hear very, very, very common. And when I ask couples, have you been married before? Yeah, this is my second time or third time. And, I always ask, like, what happened the first time? And they always say it was the next step in our relationship. Everyone wanted us to get married. It's everything I just said. And it wasn't, I'm not hearing, I want to marry this woman because I want to spend the rest of my life with her. That's not what I'm hearing. That's not what they say. Ask them either because
Right.
I'm not here to get into your business, but I do like to know information.
That wouldn't be too conducive to selling engagement rings, to be really
Yeah,
honest with them. I wouldn't think it
exactly.
is.
Yeah. Oh, there's been a few times where I told a guy like I don't think this is a good idea.
One time, I think I was buying a ring for a girlfriend of mine like 10, 12 years ago. It wasn't an engagement ring or anything. And she actually was pretty brutally honest with me. She asked me, is this girl the one? And we had been dating for about a year. And I had said, I'm not sure. And then she said, no, then she's not the one. And I was like, oh.
I wonder
And
if it was me.
she turned out to be right, this girl. So I take for that what you will, but I thought that was interesting that she was so bold to say that. And I guess maybe because I did buy something, so she was able to be more honest with me.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
so those guys, you think they're just afraid to be alone, and that's why they just think, oh, or they're just often, I guess it's they just don't want things to change. They're comfortable in the
I
current
mean,
circumstances.
I did this in my 20s. I was just building in my relationship. Bought a house with my boyfriend. Um, it was just kind of like the next thing to do when we shouldn't have been together. I mean, we were both great people. We just weren't supposed to be together. But I'm guilty of it. I
Right.
wasted 7 years of my life. I wasted 7 years of someone else's life.
Was it really wasted though?
That's a long time. Yes. It could have ended in maybe 3 years.
Okay. Well, I'm saying I only mean that from the perspective that there's always something to learn, and perhaps it was just part of the
Not in
process for
3
you.
years. Yeah. yes. I mean, just me going through the experience of 7 years and talking to other couples or other people when they're going through their thing and using myself, like I made that mistake.
Right.
That's a big, long time mistake.
So let's
So
go into that relationship a little bit while we're on it. So, did you tell him you loved him first, or did he tell you he loves you first?
that 7 year one, he told me.
Okay. And that's something I'd caution dudes against doing. Only in rare circumstances would I say they should say it first. Usually because it's like what I said before, like when a man's on his mission and purpose, that's what's number one. But often when the dude says it first, it means he's kind of drifting off of his course a little bit. It always just seems to be better when the woman's the one, because you want that as a man. You probably don't agree with this, and that's fine. But as a man, you want to know that woman's like in. She's in on you. And in my experience, whenever the guy, me, has cared more than the woman, it did not go too well. Because if
I
anything,
feel like
usually
it's
pushes
like
them away.
I feel like men care more about women and women care more about their children. I think
Okay, yeah.
that's where I think that a woman can just don't think that their bodies can care for a man the way a man can care for a woman because they're meant to love children more than a man can love a child.
Ah, okay, that's that.
I don't want to have children. I'm not the motherly type, but this is things that I've witnessed, like
Okay,
just from watching people.
okay.
But
So,
I think that men fall in love with women first. And I think there's nothing wrong with telling a woman that you're in love with her or that you're falling in love with her. So sprinkle some, I'm falling for you or something like that. And then that
okay.
opens the door. Okay, I'm, well, that 7 year relationship, a man didn't tell me he was in love with me until I left him when I was 30. So 4 years. A man didn't tell me he was in love with me. And I
You didn't?
had no, that when I told you before we went live, he never told me. Nope, none.
That's it. So 4 years it took him to say it.
Well, I was only with that man for 1 year, but
Oh, it
yeah,
was a different guy. Okay.
yeah,
So there's another red pill trope, and it says that women, they love differently than men. And a lot of men get themselves in trouble because they think the woman should be able to love them in the same exact way a man does. And I agree with that concept. Women are different when it comes to love a lot. And you said so yourself there, where you think women are more prone to love their children more
yeah,
so than they can the man they're with.
yeah,
Now, if you go back to like the Bible, for example, they say something like the relationship between the man and the woman, like that's got to be number one, and then the kids come second. It's kind of a controversial thing to say, especially in this day and age. But what are your thoughts on that? You don't think the relationship between husband and wife would come first? You would think, from the woman's perspective, the children would come first.
Well, the building block would be the man and woman
Right.
met first, right?
Yes.
And then the children came. Um, but I think I feel like a father would die for the wife and the kids, but the wife would die for the kids only.
Oh, okay. That's a good way to put it, I guess. I could see that happening. Now, some people also think, though, like when the woman loves the kids more, it means that that guy was kind of more like a tool to the woman, and not like a tool as in like the negative thing you'd call a dude, but like
Yeah,
just
to
just the
impregnate, to have.
yeah, just like the facilitator. It's what she could do or what he could do for her. Right? He could impregnate her and give her children. So it's going to be a little different. Now, there's another thing that happens like when a woman is head over heels for a dude. Now, has that happened to you? Where you think of a relationship where you were the one just head over heels for the dude?
um, no. Maybe
Never?
in high school.
So I think
I did have a crush on this guy for a long time.
is that recently or more in the 20s?
I started the crush in 7th grade, and I was over the crush maybe like 2, 3 years ago.
What? That's a long crush.
I know, it was a very long crush.
And it never got acted upon. There was never no
It
dates, no
did.
nothing.
It did. I think it was like right after I graduated high school, but he joined the Air Force and went
So maybe you could tell, without getting too specific, I guess, like what were some of his traits that really drew you to him?
Well, he had physical traits. He had brown hair and a big nose. That's what I love.
Oh, okay.
We liked the same music. He had, I was in high school, so he had like a fast car. He was super nerdy. I remember in 8th grade, I think he got suspended for like a bomb threat.
The bad boy.
I know, yeah, exactly, a bad boy.
Trouble.
But we could talk about anything. I don't know. I just love chatting with him, and he was kind of a loner. I mean, I'm a loner, but I'm very outgoing. I don't know. I always liked him.
Would you say he
And
was more of a masculine dominant type dude, or
hmm, now I would say he's more masculine dominant. Back then, I would not call him dominant.
right?
Mm-mm.
Only a rare amount of dudes, a small amount of dudes, are like the dominant person from the start. A lot of guys, they got to grow into it. It's not
Yes.
innate in them. And
Yeah.
so, like, I hear a lot of women complaining these days about how a dude's balls don't drop until he's 30 a lot of times. And I think that's part of it too. Because guys, like, we got to become something, right?
Yeah,
And it's
and that
harder.
takes time. You don't really know what you're supposed to be doing because you're just like watching everyone else doing what they're doing, and you're thinking, "Am I supposed to be doing that?" And then it's not until
Right.
your 30s you're like, "I don't want any of that. I don't want to be like that. This is who I want to be like." So the 30 thing is right, and it's kind of right for women too. I think. I mean, I didn't really know who I was until I was like 31, 2, somewhere
Right.
around there.
So I say women have a different timeline though too, because
Yeah.
from the moment a woman sexually matures, like her whole life changes, and
Yep.
it's pretty young when that happens a lot of times, unfortunately. But it it makes them grow up fast. That they got to learn how to handle all this male attention. They got to learn how to
Yeah.
deflect or to move it away. So I don't know. What do you learn in that kind of process about dudes?
Being young, hitting puberty.
Well, I guess like what do you learn overall from the whole thing? Like what does I guess it'd be interesting to hear what the woman's perspective is from the time it started happening and then how you see it over time.
About like me like turning into a woman at a young
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
I looked so much like I already do now, so that was a big problem. I love the attention. I did not live very safe. I would go out with any like, "Oh, you wanna come to a party? I don't even know this person." I'm like, "Let's go." Get into a stranger's car because I all of a sudden looked like I was 18, 20 years old, and I was 13 years old.
Oh,
And yeah, me and my friends, man, I don't know how I lived
trouble.
past it. Trouble, yeah. And my mom, she like wanted a tattoo on my head that said like, my daughter's 13.
Yeah, it's
But
crazy.
yeah, and then as I got older, and when I say older, I mean like late 20s, I I realized that like I need to like cover up a little bit.
Well, you make it
Not
tired of the
so much.
attention a little bit.
Yeah, I do.
Because you had it for 15 years at that point, so it's I'm sure it gets old. But like what are the ways that most dudes give you the attention or give you their attention?
So a weird thing is I remember going into Wawa recently and I actually had my mask on. I don't always wear my mask in the Wawa, but I had it on and I had a scarf on. I had a North Face on, and I walked by this guy and he like was like, mm. I'm like, what are you mm about? My eyeballs? Like I don't get it. But it was like the same reaction I would have got at 14 with whatever skimpy outfit I had on.
Skimpy up. I mean, women
Yeah.
women do love attention though, and they say in this
Yeah.
day and age with social media. I heard an analogy the other day that social media to women is kind of like how porn is to men, because like a women, it's easy for any woman to have sex if they really want to, so that's not as valuable to them. But the just the overall attention to know that yeah, I'm still attractive to men. Women still like that, and women to a point. I think they even like being lusted after to a point, as long as the dude's not too creepy about it or something.
Yeah.
So, but like it does make them feel good. But and men though, they fall off the handle when they get all down like the porn rabbit hole. And like to me, that's not a good thing for dudes to do because it's just not it's not conducive. Like the men I respect the most, I don't think they watch too much porn. I wouldn't think.
I 2 years ago I would have disagreed with you, but now I agree with you about the porn thing.
So you would have disagreed 2 years ago. What made you change your
Yeah.
mind?
I myself think porn's awesome, so why can't a guy watch porn? But then as I started doing more meditation and healing and becoming more spiritual, I realized how important it is to control your desires and how important those desires are with one person and different things like that. And I can't believe that I stopped watching porn, but all of these things made me grow tremendously. I don't know. I never in a million years thought that I'd be saying this actually. So
I think women watch porn for different reasons. Like they like more storylines, I would think, right? Where they say like, I like this plot, and that's why something like
not
not
really.
you.
No, I think men and women watch porn for the same reason.
Well, look at something like 50 Shades of Grey. Why was that so popular? Because it wasn't just like straight
I'm gonna be
porn.
honest. I never watched 50 Shades.
I've actually read the book because I was
I
curious what it
did
was
read
all
it.
about. I did not watch the movie though, but I did
Yeah,
read some of the book. But that was the most popular book. It sold like the most of any book
that's
since the
crazy.
freaking Bible. And it was certainly sexual, but it wasn't just the sexual. It was the whole experience, right? And the interesting thing for me, from a guy's perspective, was listening to the woman, like, and how she would think one thing and then say another. So it was pretty interesting as a guy to see that happening, where she would say, like, I'm really into this dude, but then she would say something like that would make you think she's not into the dude at all. But
Yeah,
she would,
that's real life
yeah.
actually.
But that's
Women
what was
really do that.
that's what was so interesting to me, though. And I guess the argument also, there's a lot of people in the manosphere world where they'll say, "Oh, just get with all the women you can, do this, do that. If you can do it, go do it." But to me, it's like when you truly practice radical self-respect, as I would call it, not everyone deserves you. Like, not every woman, just because you can, doesn't always mean you should. Now, for men, not all men are going to be able to. In fact, most men, I would say 90+%, they're not going to be able to get with many women. They have to get what they can get because they don't got it. They don't got it. But for certain dudes who do, I think there's something more valuable in saying, you know what, I can do all this, but I choose not to.
Choose not to. Yes.
And it's kind of like you want to save it for people that you think are really worthwhile. You don't want to
Yes.
just, because to me, the
Yep.
meaningless sex part is just, it gets old. That's old pretty quick. And it's not even that fun a lot of times when you don't have something more going on with it. And so that's one of the things I've learned. And as a guy, that's one of the ways I would always get myself in trouble, where I would say, you know what, I'm going to go out with this girl. I'm not really that into her, but it'd be nice to get laid and do all this kind of thing. And I would always get myself in trouble though when I did it that way. And I've had to learn, like, you know what? It's like one of my expressions I say in the book. If it's not a hell yeah, it's a fuck no. That was the hardest. It was the hardest one for me to adhere to, because I was like, why am I not attracting the girls I'm hell yeah about, but I'm attracting all these other girls I'm not hell yeah about? And I had to learn it's not doing me any good to go forward in that. It's like I got to be doing something different, so I am attracting the girls I am actually hell yeah about. So it was hard though, because ultimately, to circle back again to like some of those issues you were talking about with the engagement rings, is you got to be okay being alone. Like
Yes.
if you're not
Yeah.
okay alone, you're gonna just keep on falling short. And so I've been able to do that, thankfully, and it's a lot better. So actually, this guy Josh, he had a question for you, and I guess it'd be from a guy's. I'll give him my thoughts too, but he's 26. What kind of suggestions would you give him as a 26-year-old dude?
Suggestions on dating?
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's what we're talking about: dating, money.
Oh, money. Save your money. No one cares what shoes you're wearing. If they do, they're not important.
Okay.
I really think at 26 you should be focusing on your career. I think I really
Especially
do.
as a dude.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially as a dude.
when you're 26 years old, you do not realize how much money you're making. You don't realize how much money you're wasting. And I think it's really important at 26 as a man is to like look at your money, see what you're doing with it, and come up with a plan. Like 26 is such a good age. And then once you figured out the money part, then maybe you try to start dating. That's what I would do if I can go back to being 26.
Especially as a guy. So
I
like
mean,
me,
I bought my first house at 26 actually, and I didn't need to do that.
well, you had your shit together pretty young, but I think
Yeah,
also
I did.
women often have their shit together before men for various
Yeah.
reasons. Because, like we mentioned before, I think women have to mature faster in some ways, and so they get shit done quicker. They just do. And
Also, 26, I mean, unless he wants to get like have kids at 30, he should be having a lot of fun, like actual making memory or traveling. Oh my gosh. A lot of people in their 20s don't travel. I mean, that's like the best. If you can't travel outside the United States, there's so many beautiful places you can go in the United States that will change your whole outlook on life. Just going to these national parks and seeing like it doesn't even cost money. I mean, obviously you have to get there, but
right.
at 26, that's what he should be doing, as long as his
Okay.
finances are in line.
All right. So he says he doesn't know if he wants kids or not. But what I would say to him is, if you read, like, the first step in all of it will be, if you don't have like mental health stuff going on, you get your mindset right, number one,
Yeah.
because that impacts freaking everything. You
Mm-hmm.
get your mindset right, you see where your limiting beliefs are, and then you ask yourself a question: what do I have to offer that the world needs? And then you think about that. You think, what can I do better than most people do? And I give that to the world somehow. Usually that's part of a dude giving his gifts away and being on his mission and purpose. And often it happens when you got to overcome something too. So someone struggled with something, they've been abused or had addictions or whatever it is. Usually that becomes like the stepping stone to doing something in that area. Like, because you have personal experience with it. You understand it in a way that no one else can unless they've been there. So getting on that mission and purpose would be good. Reading a book like The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, which is great for money thoughts. And then along the same line of that would be Master the Money Game by Tony Robbins. Those two books really like got my head straight. So the compound effect just talks about how, and this is true for everybody. So like when someone's 20 years old, and you see them make positive, consistent decisions daily for 20 years. And you see what that looks like 20 years down the line versus the person that made shitty decisions for 20 years and then like smoked and binge drank all the time, all that kind of good stuff. And you see where they are 20 years later. And the gap between where they are is humongous. And it's also true for money too. Like, so investing, that's the one thing I wish I could go back and tell my younger self to do. It's like, get yourself into Bitcoin. It's right there on Coinbase. Learn about crypto and just consistently put something towards an investment.
Yeah.
Doesn't even have to be much, especially when you're younger. And when you're younger, you can afford to take some more risks too.
Yeah,
But
that's being 26. I'm like, if I was 26,
right. And so like
it's the money thing. Like, I would have stopped spending so much money.
right. But and that's the other part, spending the money part. He said if you want to change anything, the best thing to do is to track it. So if you want
Yeah.
to stop spending so much money, you track actually where is your money going? How are you spending it? And when you see it, you're like, oh shit, I'm fucking spending money on this, money on that. And I think it's a fine line because you don't want to be like super strict with this when you're young either, because you still want to live. There's a balance between living and having experiences. Like, I dicked around my whole 20s and it wasn't the best, but it was good in other ways because I got a lot of experiences and like you learn a lot when you do some stupid stuff. Like you learn
Yeah.
and you put
You
yourself in
learn.
some,
Yeah, that's the easiest way for me to learn is make a
yeah.
mistake.
Well, that what do they say? Like experience is the word we use for our mistakes or something like that. And it's like, yeah, that's how it works though. You learn from your mistakes, hopefully, and hopefully you don't make the same ones again. But the other thing that was good with the investments was you got to see your investments like a tax. And that's why I learned Tony Robbins talked about that in Master of the Money Game. He said that if the government was taking more money from your check, you would find a way to make life work. And so he goes, that's how you got to see your investments too. You make it as if it's a tax, do it no matter what, and then you'll see. All you got to do is put a fixed percentage in consistently. And if you're 26 years old, by the time you're my age, 36, honestly, you could, with the way the markets are right now in crypto, he could easily be a millionaire by the time he's my age, which would be pretty good. You want to be 36 and a millionaire, and now you got your choices. But so That's what I do now. So I have, when you get your investments down and then you get your money working for you, the money bags game, I call it. Like, because the wealthiest people, they're not freaking working for their money. Their money is just working for them. And oftentimes they're exploiting others too while they're at it. But they're not trading the time for money anymore. This is not how they do it. And I only talk about this money stuff because money isn't everything. And I used to have the attitude that money didn't matter at all, which is also wrong. But it's like I couldn't get around this. Money will determine how you spend the majority of your life. Like how you make it and how much you have will determine how you spend the majority of your time. So if you want more freedom of your time, you got to get your money straight. So that's enough of that little money tangent. But we'll go back here. And I guess as far as dating would go at 26, as a guy, you don't need to be dating anyone seriously at 26 at all. It's like you want to experience just like the different kinds of women there are. Like you might run into like a narcissistic girl or a borderline girl or a girl that's depressed or a girl that's got addictions. Like you got to experience it and you got to know what it's like. You got to know what to look for. And that's something you can't learn it on your own. Like that, you do got to get out there to a point. Like you got to be okay on your own, but you still got to experience things because you're not going to be good at dating or talking to women if you never do
Yeah,
it.
unless you, yeah, exactly.
So it's like it's a little bit of both. Little, and so you say though, you don't want kids.
Me?
Yes,
I
you.
don't want kids. No, I never wanted to have kids.
No, it's not even necessarily too late for you. Why wouldn't you want them?
I am not one to take care of things.
You don't like taking care of things?
No, I mean I have my
Because
plans.
well, you seem like you have the kind of energy that you would probably be good at it.
Yeah, I mean I was a great babysitter a long time ago, but I love waking up when I want to wake up, going to bed when I go to bed, eating when I want to eat. If it's my day off, when I want to go spend 10 hours in the woods, that's what I want to do. And I don't want to bring a little one with me. I want to do it by myself.
Oh, okay. Like I
And
said, whatever.
I've always been this way. Like even as a kid, I would just go out in the woods by myself. I'd go play dolls with myself. I didn't care that maybe my friend's coming, maybe she's not. I didn't care.
Very independent of you.
I guess I just love hanging out with myself.
There's nothing wrong with that. When I was scrolling through your pictures the other day to find a thumbnail, you have a lot of nature pics, or just you out and about. Where have you been that was a pretty cool place to travel?
One of my favorite places I've ever been, it's called Black Canyon of the Gunnison in Colorado. It's in Montrose. This canyon, I'm not really good with like remembering all these things because I have Lyme disease, but I think only like 20 or 30% of the canyon sees light at any given time, which is why it's called Black Canyon. So it's like really
Interesting.
steep like this. But when you get out of the car and you're walking up to it to go hike and your eyes see this, and it's like you can't believe you're looking at this canyon. It's just so pretty. And because
Which
it's not,
which
go
state is
ahead,
it in?
Colorado,
Okay.
because it's not like the Grand Canyon or the what's that, the Horseshoe Bends where there's like so many people there. There's not that many people here, so you have this whole canyon to yourself, and it's just gorgeous. And then you used to be able to go down to the water, but you got to like drive to another spot to get to the water. But the water is like kind of like a little bit like rapid, but it's just crystal clear and it's cold, but and the rocks are gorgeous. I just love it there.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite places to go.
So you travel there by yourself, or you travel with girlfriends,
I've
boyfriend?
never I have went there with sister and friends.
Okay. So never
Yeah,
with like boyfriends or whatever.
not there with a boyfriend, no.
And so,
Boyfriends have been like Mexico, the islands.
yeah, yeah, it makes sense. A little resort type
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense too. But so you said before you were getting into like what got you into your path of spirituality. I find that what brings people to that is usually pretty interesting. So what kind of brought you to
Well,
that?
spirituality, I've been fighting my entire life. Um, I have felt agnostic since I was born. I mean, you just tell the way I like watch everything. That's just kind of brain I have. And I went through a little bit of that I told you it was my ex that experienced with the fire, and I developed PTSD over time. Some other things happened, and I went to the doctor, and she knows like I'm not going to take prescriptions. So she pushed me into meditation. I started mindfulness meditation, and um, I totally changed into a different person, like almost overnight. I started like 2-3 weeks, and then I got hit by I was in my car, put that first, hit by a tow truck, and I was able to like, I got hit, I pulled over, I waited till the police came. I was like so calm. I cannot believe how calm I was. It was like, looking back, it's like a little disturbing, but it was like I just took this mindfulness meditation so serious that anything crazy that happened, I was just like, I just didn't let it affect me as it was used to affect me before. Like I used to feel like this like lava of emotion would come out of me during like these different things that would happen. And then after that, I'm like, God, life is peaceful. And then I started finding spirituality, like, just like, I guess my connection to nature to begin with, but it started with the PTSD.
Okay, yeah, I figured it was something. There's usually
Yeah.
some sort of catalyst. But I
Yes.
found it interesting that you had said fighting with your spirituality. I was listening.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson said that the word Israel means to wrestle or to fight with God, and that's what they always had to endure in the Bible, was that kind of thing. So it's interesting to me you kind of had the same verbiage, fighting with spirituality. But
Yeah.
have you read the Power of Now?
I have not read The Power of Now, but I have like little from medium.com's, like, would be Cliff Notes versions of it.
Okay. That was a big one for me when I read it first. That was another one of those eye-opening books, one of those life-changing books that really kind of puts things into perspective. But what was your meditation practice like? Like how did you implement it into your life?
I guess it's like when you find yourself in, now it's like, I mean, you don't even think, you just do it, if that makes sense. But you find yourself in a situation that you just feel like you're losing control of your emotions, and bringing myself to like, I could bring myself to that lake, that thumbnail picture. I could bring myself there, and I'm there, and I'm like at peace. And even though like whatever situation I'm in, I'm chaotic, maybe a customer screaming at me or whatever it is, I'm just like very peaceful in the moment. And
Right,
it's
right.
just awesome. And like I wake up in the morning, I meditate, I do real affirmations.
How do you do them?
It's not like, oh, I'm gonna find $1 million in my bank account affirmation. It's like, today I'm gonna be the best version of myself today. That's what I'm gonna do. Yesterday I couldn't stop eating like maybe a sandwich or something. Today I'm gonna manage the way I eat better today. Like
Okay.
real affirmations, not like I'm gonna own 7 properties in 2 years. Like real affirmations.
Right. I think a lot of people that I really respect, they do like mindset training every morning. Like I do.
Yeah.
I write things down. And it was actually pretty cool how I even learned about doing it. I was listening to Scott Adams on Tim Ferriss's show, and he was mentioning how a hypnotist told him, like, you don't want to ask for specific things as much as cultivate qualities within yourself.
Yeah.
And then so he would say, the hypnotist would tell him, write something down 15 times. And so he got a little jiggy with it. Like it was borderline dark artsy that he did. But his first thing was he wanted to get a certain test score on a certain test. It was like a GMAT or something. And he wrote it down when he got 94 on this test. He did it for a couple months. And then lo and behold, he takes a test and he gets that score. And he's like, well, I'm not saying it happened because of that, but it happened. And then
Yeah.
he got jiggy with it. And I say that because he said, I'm going to sleep with this girl in the office. And he started writing that down 15 times. And he said it was out of his league, and he didn't have money at the time, so it was out of his league. And that happened too. So that made him a believer in the whole mindset thing. I try to do it and just cultivate qualities that I want, or what are the things
Yeah.
that I'm struggling with. And I also try to change it up though too, because I don't want to be too robotic about it, because it doesn't seem to have the proper effect when I do it that way. But when I change it up and think, okay, what am I really struggling with? Like, what do I really need to focus on? And that's what I do it. And the magic of it though is it works. Like the stuff works.
It does work as long as it's realistic.
Yes. It's the closest thing to magic I've ever come across because
Yeah.
it's neuroplasticity. Like it absolutely does change like your brain. And
Yes, it
that's
does.
not even just hocus pocus. Like that's science. That's why it's always interesting to me the things people can do. That's why magicians are very interesting to me. People who really push themselves in any sort of physical endeavor or something. Like there's
You
something
know,
fascinating about that.
with the magic thing, I was sick my entire life on antibiotics every month or every other month, on steroids, in and out of the hospital. I started, I've always ate better, but like really eating better, um, managing my stress, paying attention to who I hung out with, like who I spent my time with, sleeping better, and then into the meditation. And I haven't touched an antibiotic um, in 3 years, 3 years and a month, something like that. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe it either, but it was like that retraining your brain, it like really creates magic. It's like a real placebo effect on becoming mentally and physically healthier.
Yeah. Well, sleep. I think sleep is one of the most
Sleep.
underrated things that
Yes.
a lot of people in the Western world here, they don't get enough sleep. But me, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep a night, I'm a little bitch. Like just straight up. Like I need sleep or I'm not the best version of myself. But sleep is so restorative. And I think a lot of people don't, they just don't do it well enough. Like, and they do other things,
They
interfere
do
with their
other things
sleep.
instead. Yes. I
Well, I
have
think,
to watch my show. I have to do this. I have to
yeah.
do that. I'm like, but you don't have to do it.
But even like the screen time, the blue light, I think that probably affects like melatonin too.
Yeah,
So
it
that
does.
can't be good for people's sleep. But I can't believe I forgot to ask you this, but this is kind of the whole point here. So
Okay.
with the dudes that you've like been going out with on these 100 dates, what have you noticed like the patterns of like how were they acting? What were the ways that they were turning you off? What were the things that were doing that were good? Or what were just some of the troublesome patterns that you saw?
Um, troublesome patterns. Oh, I can talk about my first Bumble date.
There you go.
He was very eager to go on a date, like right after I swiped him. Very quick to go on a date. I
And
met
that wasn't good to
him.
you? And you didn't like that?
Well, I learned my once they're like, I want to meet you now. Within like an hour of chatting, I've learned that they're very obsessive.
Okay.
So that's the way he was acting. I was like, oh, I am actually free. So we went to Ox in Voorhees, and then
Oh, that's my spot.
and then he actually didn't have a job, so he lied about that. And then he told me that he felt like he could fall in love with me, but I just met him.
On the first date?
Yes, on the first
Oh
date.
no.
And then I was like, I don't know about this. So then we parted ways. He tried kissing me, and I don't kiss people on
Oh.
the first date. I know I may have kissed some men on the first date, but it's not really my thing. I did not kiss him. I went home, and then I think the next night he called me like 40 times, and I said, "Don't ever talk to me again." We had a mutual friend. Yeah, he actually called my friend crying.
Called her crying?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah, so that type of situation, that date is very amplified, right? That's like a really extreme example. But what I've noticed is when I would go out with a guy, I would swipe on them, and they would, want to meet me right away. And sometimes I couldn't because I'm working so much. Maybe I have a call out after work. And then they start getting like a little aggressive. And then eventually, do go on that date. And then it's like the same behavior as I got from him, like very clingy, very like overly emotional, like you were talking about before. Um, so I've noticed like that was very consistent. I did notice when guys take a really long time to text back when they don't have like the type of job that when I know their phone's available, I did notice they have a little bit harder time with commitment. Um, I also had a harder time with commitment too. I can admit that. So I am known to not text men back
All right, well,
at
let's pause.
excessive time, but I can admit that.
Okay, well, let's pause here for real quick because you touched on a lot of things I want to touch on there. But with the last one you said first, have you ever asked a man for commitment, or do you find the men normally ask you?
I have asked one man for commitment in the past, I don't know, since I was 18 years old. One guy.
Okay. Because I would tell men, like, usually a woman won't be like direct with it, but she'll do something like maybe she'll be drinking one day and then she'll blurt it like, what is this? What are we? And like as a guy though, like that's what you would want to hear the woman say, because that's like
Yeah,
your cue.
that going on over 100 dates thing could have easily been less if I was more direct, spoke spoke about what I wanted more, asked what the guy wanted more, and really been honest that maybe I wasn't attracted to the guy instead of
Huh.
telling myself that I could be attracted to him.
Remember, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a fuck no.
Yeah.
That you gotta, if you live by that, your life will be better. I promise.
Well, the reason I went on so many dates, really, besides the numbers game, was I would have customers or buy an engagement ring, right? And we're chatting, and I was like, oh, this is like a really good conversation. I really enjoy it. But I wasn't necessarily attracted to them, but the conversation was so good. And that's like, I need someone I could have this type of conversation with. And so then I'm like, all right,
Demisexual.
yes, very demisexual. So you understand what demisexual means, but most men do not. So that was like why I started, I'm like, let me just broaden my horizons of like different, hair color and stuff that I wouldn't normally date, but then ultimately I just wasn't attracted to some of the men or most of
So
them.
let me go back to that first guy you're talking about there. So on one hand, I can see wanting to see someone sooner rather than later,
I do
because
too,
from a
100%.
from a guy's perspective, I see both. I see women complaining about how men just want a pen pal, or they're asking for nudes right away, or some other, and never want to meet in person. So I can see where that could be an issue on one side, but I would say you
Yeah.
want to get them off the app sooner rather than later, because a
You
woman
do
has
because you
some.
can't tell if you have chemistry either.
Exactly right. So women, I think also they have so many options on these dating apps, and so I can imagine it's probably hard for some dudes to stand out. So if you go on Tinder, you go on Bumble, you go on Hinge, you go on Facebook Dating or Match.com or wherever, like you go on there, you get a ton of matches, and all of a sudden now you're spoiled for choice, and now
Yes.
that can be a difficult. That's difficult in a different way, because now you got to boil it down, and it can be overwhelming. I bet to have all those
Yeah.
options right there. So I can see that could be another issue that could happen. So I don't mind the fact they wanted to see you like in person quicker. Yeah, that's fine. But as far as that like urgency goes, or that like keep on going, like that's no good. Like you
Yeah,
gotta.
that was something I learned that, and I'm sure some women want that crazy obsessive type of guy,
Some
but
do,
that's
some
not
do.
my type.
Well, you see, those women. They're the ones that say something like, "I want a guy to be obsessed with me." And they'll start talking stuff like that. And I'll say, is that really what you want? You think you want that. And maybe
Yeah.
the ones who are a little more unhealthy, maybe they
No,
do really want
I
that.
I want you to love yourself first and love me second. That's what's important to me. So my other big problem I had dating was we'd go on a first date. I actually enjoyed going to a bar and sitting next to each other. I think that's more intimate than going to a restaurant. Um,
Sure.
but some women would argue that that's trashy. So to each their own. But I like that I'm like, just basically how we are. Like you're closer to someone and you can talk. But so I sit down and I look at a guy. They all have the same Rolex on. I'm like, I already know how this conversation's gonna go. Then they want to talk about their accomplishments.
You know what I would tell them? I would say, you got to maintain a little mystery, dude. Like
Yeah.
you don't want to give your whole life away. You don't want to tell your life story. If anything,
Well, it's like the same thing. And to me, I love to have fun all the time. And I'm not, I wouldn't hear about what are you doing to have fun? Like, what are you doing?
but
It's
this is
just
why
like,
action dates are so much better.
yeah,
When
yes,
you're doing something. It's like Oscar Wilde said, you learn more about someone in an hour of play than you do in a year of conversation. It's
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
true.
So you do something together. Like, oh, go on a ghost hunt, or you do like some sort of like one of those fun house things or puzzle rooms. It's like, yeah, guess what? That's probably one of the best indicators if
Yeah.
you're going to work well with somebody. How do you
Yeah, if
handle
you can
that
actually
puzzle?
work well.
How do you handle that escape room together? Like, yeah, that'll fast forward and expedite the whole process. Like, you'll see, do you work well together in that escape room? Because if you don't, how is it going to get better?
Yeah. But I noticed, like, in sales, I am so good at asking questions, and I go on these dates, and I'm like, "So, what else about your life?" Because 'Cause they're like, I guess, have no interest in asking me a question. And then there was COVID dating, right? Everyone's on lockdown. I realized how many people were depressed. And
Sure.
I am not
Yeah.
depressed at all. And I'm like, "What do you like to do now? What do you like to do now? Like, not what did you like to do before? What do you like to do now? Like, what are you doing to be happy?" And everyone's like so depressed. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is the worst."
That's a bummer. That
Yeah, it
is,
wasn't summer.
doesn't sound like much fun.
No, but I'm like, in numbers, I gotta somehow find someone, right?
So let's go reiterate here to go through. So you see a lot of guys are talking about themselves too much. They are just talking about their accomplishments. Kind of comes off like they're trying to show off or brag a little bit. Not too good. You got a dude trying to call you 40 times the next day after a date. That's atrocious. I mean, I hear these stories and it's like, I don't know how a guy could even do that. Like, how can you respect yourself and do that? And then as far as the first kiss thing goes, it's like, if a woman wants to kiss you, you're gonna know, or you should know. And so, but if it's not, if it's even a question, I would say no, no. But if she wants
The
to, you
other
normally
thing
wouldn't.
is, as I started going on these dates and I became more spiritual, I realized how important it is to talk about my wants and needs and being transparent about that. So on my profile it says I am a very happy person and I need romance. Like, I need romance so bad. When men go out with independent women, the assumption is they don't need romance for some reason. So I meet this guy and we go out. We went to Iron Hill Brewery and we actually had a pretty decent date. I can't say I was like that physically attracted to him, but he was attractive and we did communicate very well. So he had potential. So after the second, I did actually kiss him a little bit on the first date, and then went home, and then we're like chatting. We actually chat like until 2 o'clock in the morning, and then we're talking about like our second date. So when this around the second date was coming around, uh, he said, "Do you want to hang out?" And I'm like, hey, he say something like that, and I was like, "Am I your bro?" And he said it like in a, "Do you want to come chill?" He said, "Do you want to come chill?" I was like, "Am I your bro?" He didn't text me back. I'm like, guess he didn't understand the romance part. Do I want to
Well,
chill?
okay. On one hand, this is where women can be difficult because some women will say they get creeped out by someone calling something a date or having something be romantic. And so when a guy's had enough experiences with women like that, you might think, oh shit, I'm not going to say date again. I'll say something more casual like hang out or chill. But then they say it to you, and then it's a turn off to you. So it can be
The guy
tough.
said I need romance. Asking me to chill will
So
never work.
so I'll say this about that too. So, and for me, when a woman is more feminine, it makes me want to do more of those things when they're in their feminine. Now, it becomes more difficult though when they're more in their masculine and they're more combative. Like I said before, someone can be combative and sexually attractive, but that doesn't mean I want to like be like romantic with them. It's kind of like I read an excerpt of The Way of the Superior Man the other day. It's like when you are more neutral in your poles, it's kind of like you're just rubbing genitals together. Like there is no passion. What creates the passion though is a masculine and a feminine. And when someone's going to be in their feminine, yeah, the guy. And my suggestions to younger dudes would be, it's like it starts with the mindset and the frame though, because if you don't get the mindset and the frame right, it all crumbles from there. And the women are experts at detecting when you're a fraud. So you gotta like own everything. Like own everything you're gonna do. Don't be apologetic at all, but you own it. Plan something, take charge, lead the way. If you do that, you got more than 50% of it down right there. and you make sure you have your romantic intention. And I would also say you don't want to smother some girl either. Like don't be texting too much in the beginning. But
Yeah.
that's what makes it hard though with the online dating, because you got to do a little texting to get it going.
Yes, you do.
But the other problem with the online dating is, and this is why, like, it should not feel as forced as it does. But that's what online
No.
dating does, though. It makes it.
Yes and no. I don't know. I've had some forced conversations and maybe met them and it was the same. And then I've had great conversations and met them and we had great conversations. And
Well,
like,
but what I mean is that when you're on a dating app, it's everyone's intentions known. It's like, oh, we're here to date. We're here to meet people. We're here to do this. And it's just not natural feeling to me anymore. But when you're just living your life and you're going out and about, it seems much more natural. It doesn't seem as forced. So I can see the pros and cons of both. But so that's why I mean, though, when I say there's so many options people have because of social media, because of all the dating sites, but it doesn't mean they're good options. It doesn't mean that there's going to be people that are going to be on your same wavelength and they'll
yeah.
understand demisexual type stuff.
The demisexual. I told a guy I was demisexual, and then like I don't know, 20 minutes later he sent me a naked picture of himself, like from up. I'm like, do you know what demisexual means? Like now
Apparently
I
not.
don't even want to go, and I actually canceled. I never went on a date with that man.
Apparently not. Well, and that's the other thing I would tell dudes, like, don't ever be sending topless pictures of yourself or
No,
naked pictures unless explicitly asked for.
unless asked
Do not.
for. Yeah,
Do not. I mean, that. I think most guys understand that though nowadays, though, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think most dudes understand. Don't do that.
I thought I was actually shocked that this man did that, and 'cause he's really smart. Not smart
Well,
enough. So I can't I canceled the date before we met and I explained why and I was like, this is the type of guy I'm looking for and I don't think you are. And the example being just that. And he's like, that's where you're wrong. I'm like,
oh
telling
no,
me that I'm wrong. I'm like, all right.
that's a little narcissistic of himself there.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like
looking
he
back, he was
knows.
actually very narcissistic.
That's what I'm saying. Because when they say they know better than you, what you
Yeah.
think and what you want and what you feel.
Yeah.
Eh. So to go on though about this, what are you looking for? I guess we haven't even talked about that yet. So what are you looking for? You're looking for romance, but what else?
Um I didn't know you'd ask me this question. I wasn't prepared
Well,
for it.
I'll say this about this question. So
Uh,
oftentimes women have a hard time articulating exactly what they want, but they know it when they see it. They know it when they feel it. Like, oh shit, this is what I've been wanting. This is what I'm missing. But it's hard for them to put it into words. But
I can say, like, going through all those dates, I didn't 100% know what I wanted until I knew what I didn't want, if that makes sense.
okay, so maybe we could talk about that too. What didn't you want?
Um, I do this in family, friends, and relationships where I make excuse for bad behavior or maybe behavior that I don't deserve, might necessarily be bad. So I dated this guy on and off for like 2 years, and I loved being with him. I would be with him one night, and then the weekend, I mean, I'd fly to California and see a guy I was seeing in California. So it wasn't like we were exclusively dating, but we did this for 2 years. And he would say, Danielle, you're such a good friend. And then sometimes I wouldn't hear from him for like a couple months. Sometimes I would. And ultimately, I shouldn't have allowed myself to
Was this guy you
entertain that
hooking up
type.
with?
Yeah,
Okay, and he
I
was still
shouldn't have.
calling you a friend.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
sneaky.
Yeah,
That's
he
kind of
was
like a.
not sneaky either. Like he's probably slept with 3 girls his entire life. I'm
And
sure.
you,
Yeah, he's like super out there nerd. But I loved spending time with him, and he's a little autistic, a lot autistic. And he's a little very off, but I loved spending time with him. And looking back, like the moment I felt like I was making excuses for his behavior and like pushing my own feelings down, like my wants and needs down, that's when I realized that I shouldn't have put up with that.
So it's interesting that you said he's autistic because I know there's a lot of dudes that claim to be like incels, for example, that is exactly what they struggle with. They struggle with Asperger's. They struggle with being on the spectrum. So, like, what was it about him that, even despite those things, he was able to overcome it in your eyes? So, you said he was just fun to hang out with and just spend time with.
Yeah, like I didn't hear about how much money he made or how expensive. I mean, I already knew this because I Googled it. How nice of a house he had. He didn't talk about it. He didn't
Wait,
talk about
you
things
knew
like
all that
that.
because you Googled it?
I went to his house and I'm like,
Okay, okay.
um, just like stupid stuff we would do. It was like so dumb that I love doing with my friends. I mean, I guess he was my friend. But I wanted more than what I was getting. And I was like pushing myself down or finding other guys to like make up for what I wasn't getting out of it.
Mm. Did you ever try to communicate that to him or give him subtle hints or not so subtle hints?
I think I did early last year. I'm pretty sure I did. And
Because
then he
that's what
said
they say.
he wasn't capable. He said he wasn't capable of more. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh,
Well, that's what they say people on the spectrum struggle with, picking up on social cues.
yes. And
So,
that was a big learning experience for myself.
right. 'Cause I think years ago I might have had like Asperger type symptoms, but over the years, eventually, like with a supplement routine, etc., they kind of go away. But I think there's valuable things to learn from being in that headspace too, because whether they realize it or not, they have a different perspective on the world. So they have different ways of thinking. They say, for example, Elon Musk, that he's probably on the spectrum. And if you see like how he does his relationships, it's pretty clear he's got something going on where
Yeah.
he's not playing with a full deck in that regard. Now he's a genius when it comes to Tesla and SpaceX and Solar City, but when it comes to romance, he's kind of a buffoon. But that's the price to pay sometimes. You could
Yes.
be a genius in one area, but then you're a buffoon when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
So that was interesting about that guy though. So he had only been with three girls. You were one of the three. You wanted
Yeah.
more, but he said he wasn't capable.
I never said I wanted more until like early last year.
Okay. So that's one example of that. What
Yeah.
other what other kinds of things do you see out there in the dating world?
I see a lot of men and women that should seek therapy prior to dating. I do.
Well, I would say to dudes though, it's like you got to be careful what therapist you go to because not
You
everyone's gonna.
do, yes. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to a therapist in a long time, but I've had great therapists and not great therapists. And
Right.
you don't need to stay with your therapist. You can find a different one. But there are a lot of people that you go on dates with that have real deep-seated trust issues that shouldn't be entertaining serious dating.
Yeah, I kind of don't buy trust issues because I always think it's really you don't trust yourself if you have
Yeah.
trust issues because what's the worst that can happen? Like if someone crosses your boundaries or disrespects you, what do you not trust yourself to leave? Do you not trust yourself to enforce the boundary or what's going on with that? Like what does trust issues really mean? I think it's also code usually for you're really suspicious of someone cheating on you, for example, and you get really hyper jealous. And so, but that's something else. That's more insecurity, really. That's insecurity and lower self-esteem. Because honestly, when a dude gets in that line of thinking, usually it pushes that girl away right into someone else, oftentimes. It's like the self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. So that doesn't do any good. But I would say to dudes, every dude should probably get some sort of coach. Even women for that matter.
Yeah,
It can't
coach.
help.
Yeah, yeah, man or woman. Yeah, coach is great. Someone to help them manage their own thoughts and like, I have this intrusive thought that I shouldn't be having, and I need to like talk to someone about it. And maybe the person I just started dating a week ago is not the person to talk to about it.
And so I think a lot of people get caught up though on the credentials of people like, oh, this person's a psychiatrist. They got them really smart. This person's a psychologist. This person's an LCSW. This person's an LPC. But it's like, you know what? I don't really care what anyone's credentials are. I just think, how can this person best help me?
That's help me.
So,
Yeah.
right. So I do YouTube here. What I would be looking for though is I'd want like a YouTube mentor, someone who's got like over 50,000 subscribers who is now where I would like to be. and I would learn from that person. And as a guy, I think those kinds of relationships are invaluable. Like you need that. You need a guy like a part of a tribe or someone that's going to be a mentor that can kind
Yes,
of
you
show you the
do.
ropes. Did you have mentors growing up as a girl or
No, I
even
didn't.
teens,
No.
20s?
So,
Nope.
late teens, early 20s, I had my first mentor.
And how did you find that person?
He was actually my boss, and he was the first
Oh, so
person
it was a
ever.
dude.
It was a guy. He's the first
Okay.
person to tell me he believed in me, and honestly, it was like the only person I really wanted to make proud of my entire life.
Oh,
Yeah.
but not your dad. This person.
Oh yeah, it wasn't my dad.
Oh, okay. I mean, honestly, that's what they say happens in a lot of these sugar daddy, sugar baby relationships, honestly, is that
Oh,
part of
because
what
they
the
don't have the dad. Yeah.
well, not even necessarily that. It's that the sugar baby wants kind of like a mentor, of someone who's probably been pretty successful in their lives, and they want to kind of like follow in the footsteps a little bit, learn from the older dude's wisdom. I'm sure there's probably some daddy issue type thing in there too. So, but I hear that a lot. I hear that's how kind of how it goes down.
Well, I don't know any. I don't know anyone the sugar baby.
It's a
Just
recent
a show I just started watching.
it's more of a recent phenomenon, though. This is, I would say, the site seeking arrangement. It's probably not even 10 years old. So, like, you're my age, basically. So when we were in that zone, especially when women are in that zone, it's like an 18 to 28-year-old thing. Like that wasn't in our time frame. So the whole thing's different now. Now everyone has OnlyFans and people have their TikToks and their little streams, and it's a lot of women doing the brand of me thing right now.
Not me.
No, not you.
No, I
There's
just do
nothing
my
wrong.
own thing.
I would prefer to have a woman who's not doing that, because when a woman's doing that, like that's her whole life. Like when she's doing the brand of me thing, she's on Instagram and she's on wherever she is. Like that's everything. And as a guy, I think to myself, what time does she have for me? And that's ultimately my biggest issue with like the women who are really career oriented and mission focused. It's like I think, where's the time for me? And if I want to have kids, I would say, where's the time to do that? Where's the time to have a
Yeah.
family? And unfortunately, what people would discover is there really isn't too much time for it. If you're like, because there's not much room to have both people be that masculine force. It's like that's not how it goes. It's not how it's going to go. And the relationships, especially with like really high value men, the women like they fall into the roles, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that though. And I think a lot of
No.
people would say there is, but I don't think there is.
Yeah. I never thought I'd want like more of a masculine man, but then I look back at my like better relationships I've had. The men were more masculine, and I was more feminine.
Okay, so
That the relationships that worked at the
that's
time.
that leads into a good question. I was going to say, what were your best relationships like?
Um, the guy I was with for 7 years, while we should not have made it last that long, both of us were really good at communicating with each other. We trusted each other very much. Like if I didn't hear from him for 10 hours, I knew that he was busy or, at his cousins or whatever. Like
Yeah.
we trusted each other so much. We talked about life goals, um, things that he loved that I love, things like that.
And this is the very same relationship that you said could have been 4 years shorter.
Yeah.
That's an interesting then. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but it was still a great relationship.
Okay. Yeah, so it's interesting to me to hear about it. What about I don't know if you want to go into your worst relationships, but I don't know, what kind of suggestions would you have for the dudes out there now who are in the dating world? Because I mean, as a woman, you probably see this, but there's guys out there, a minority of guys that they don't really need much help. They're doing good already. But then there's a bigger population of dudes that they're just like smacking their heads against the wall. So what would you kind of tell those dudes? Because it might actually give them hope, though, that you've actually went out with someone that was on the spectrum and or really into them.
I
And
would say most of the guys I went out with are on the spectrum. That just seems to be the type of guy I like.
you got a type.
Yeah, I do have a type. So here's like where I get lost with the advice because my favorite was Bumble because I get so overwhelmed with messages. I can't stand them. I look at my phone and I see that, 10 people text me. I just ignore it. So I like Bumble because I'll have, maybe one or two people on the inbox. Where if you're using like I'm forgetting the other dating apps all of a sudden, Tinder or whatever, then you have like 20 or plus messages. Or, the moment I would download Match.com, I'd have 100 messages. So I guess being unique when you message someone, but don't be creepy. Don't send the amount of men that sent 7 paragraphs or even 3 paragraphs as their first message. The other thing too is if you can see that someone read your message and didn't respond, don't keep messaging them. They're not interested. Don't ask why we didn't message you back because we already don't want to communicate with you.
See, I mean, to me, that's a terrible thing for a dude to do because when you're asking why, it's like the opposite of self-acceptance. Like when someone who really believes in themselves, they think, I have a lot of good stuff to offer. You're gonna say, that's more that girl's lost. Like it's just not a match. That's it. But when you know the explanations, it just kind of reeks of insecurity.
Nobody, no one needs to tell you why they're not interested. I mean, it's online dating. I don't have to message you back. I don't have to talk to you at all. Right. And I on every app I've ever been on, this is like 30% of the men. Why aren't you answering me back? I thought we were a perfect match. I look on there and it says 100% wants kids and mine says 100% doesn't. There is no greater not match ever than that. And I shouldn't have to explain it because the moment I do explain it, then they want to tell me why I'm a bad person because I don't want to have children. And then they're trying to make me feel bad about myself when all I should have was just ignore their 7th message in a row.
So that's actually pretty common now, like the 7 messages in a row, 7 paragraph.
Very common.
Is that common?
Very common. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
the other thing would be if you see the same girl on different apps and you keep messaging them on every app, she's not going to message you back.
But this is why what radical self-respect to me is so important, because there are certain things a guy will do if he's practicing radical self-respect, and there are certain things a guy would never do if they're practicing radical self-respect. The multiple texts without a response, that's something you would never do. And I think, like, for frame of reference, I'd like to think of dudes that I would really respect. Someone like, even fictional characters sometimes. You say, what would that dude Tywin Lannister do? Or what would Jocko Willink do? Or Andrew Tate or anyone? And you think, would that dude do this behavior I'm about to do? Because if not, you might want to think twice about doing it. But all that stuff, it just reeks of neediness and reeks of insecurity.
And I can't do the neediness. But some women like it. That's the thing. Some women love it. Oh my God, this guy sent me 7 paragraphs. I'm like, he's gonna bury me in their 3rd date. Bury me in the ditch.
The ones that want the obsessive dude, right?
Yeah. So I think my biggest advice would be a little unique, but be personal. Like, for example, my bio says I'm one of the happiest people you ever meet. That's a unique phrase. I'm sure you don't hear that from people, but that's who I am. And it's important for me to put that in there because I don't want to be around someone who's not happy. So to read that in my profile and that's your first response is like, there are more people out there like you, like myself, that is, oh shit, this person actually read my profile and they're interested in something that's important to me. That's just like one really easy example. So that was like, okay, that's something that caught my eye. Hey, beautiful. Hey, beautiful. Hey, beautiful. Hey, beautiful. I already heard, I logged on to Facebook after I posted a selfie and already saw it 70 times. I don't care to be called beautiful unless you're my boyfriend. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a good intro for a dude.
No.
Because you hear it that many. But On the other hand, though, if a guy were to say it that you were really into after time, that would probably
After time, yes.
go over much better.
Very well, yes. Once
Well,
the door is open in the relationship, I mean, like, you know, back and forth,
right.
then you want to give me a compliment, that's okay. But
Well,
I
timing.
don't like, yeah, timing and good time. Yeah.
Timing is
And then
everything.
in good time, listen, I feel like this conversation's going very well. I would like to take you out.
Yeah, that's pretty simple enough.
Yeah, and I think that's not like, when can I see you? I would like to take you out. When is the best days for you? Something like that. So it's on in the woman's thing. I feel like that's a very chivalrous type of way to ask a girl on a date.
Well, it gives them the
Yeah,
freedom to
gives
not
them the
feel controlled
freedom.
or smothered, and they feel
Yeah,
free.
that's my biggest advice for online dating. Um, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Well, I mean, let's face it, most of them are not going to work out.
Yeah.
I'd say the vast majority will not. The other thing I see dudes come to me with is they're kind of stuck in like a friend zone type scenario, and like they're friends with a girl and they're spending a lot of time together. Because ultimately, I don't really think guys and girls can be friends, but I think that's another discussion. But I would say to those guys, it's like, if you really want to find out what's going on and you really like this girl, the best thing you can do is try to give her a kiss at some point, and you know all the answers from there. Either that kiss goes well, or you're going to get some sort of head turn and it'll be awkward, but then you know your answer. So a lot of the guys, though, and this is why I don't like therapy, though, because guys that have come to me, they said, "Oh, I talked to my therapist, and the therapist told me that I should tell her how I feel." And I was like, "I don't think so, bud." I say, so now this is where you might disagree too, because I think some women think they want that, but it's like, no, you don't. You don't tell the girl in the very beginning, in particular. It's like you show them. You can show them. I'd say it's 1,000 times more effective. And so the problem with those guys, though, is they're coming from a place where there's been no romantic tension. There's been
Yeah.
no
So it's
flirting.
kind of awkward.
And so it's just like, and this is what maybe some women, especially when they're younger, don't realize is that guy that more than often, if he's spending a lot of time with you, he's probably starting to like fall in love with you. He's starting to like really like you. And women would say, "Oh no, that never happens. See, guys, just my friends." But do you think guys and
Yeah.
girls can just be friends?
There are some friends that you can be, you know, different genders, and there's some that you can't. And I could tell when some of my guy friends would start liking me, and I would just pull back immediately.
Oh, you
Like,
just could recognize it. But
I can
usually,
recognize it
though,
right away.
one person, and it's not always the dude, but sometimes it's the woman who wants more. Like years ago, I used to be in those kinds of friendships, but the woman would end up liking me. And I think it would happen because I didn't put them in that zone in my head, and so since I didn't, it actually made them like me more because it appeared to be like a kind of hard to
Hard to
get,
get.
and
Yeah.
the pressure is not there anymore. And that's how things work better when it's natural too, though, because you're not on that straight path just to dating. But yeah, I mean, most of the time though, it's the guy that has the issue, and unfortunately, I would say most of these dudes they would sleep with the girl if they had the chance. Most, not all,
Yeah.
but
If the
most.
girl gave a cue that they were interested.
Yeah, yeah. I watched the podcast before they had the experiment played out. It was on Fresh and Fit. They'd have all the girls that claimed they could have guy friends and not have anything go on. Say, okay, do the experiment. Say, hey, text your friend and say you're horny and you want to hook up, and see how many of them say no. And some of them actually followed through with it, and I think none of them said no. And then they try to backtrack it sometimes and say, oh no, 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 I didn't mean it. I knew you were fucking around. I knew it. It's like, but like no, that first answer was more than likely that was the real answer.
You know, there are a lot of males that communicate with me that I know that if I said that, it would be in 2 seconds.
Of course.
I can just tell whether these men are married or not. If I gave them 1 inch, they would dive right in. So
but
I
I would
come
all,
off as being I come off bitchy.
wow.
Like, yeah,
But I would say to those dudes though too, it's like if you're in that friend type zone, and you know it, I would tell all of those dudes, don't talk to that girl anymore. Like, if you want more
If
than
you
what
want
she's willing to
more,
give you,
yes.
and then don't fake it though either, because that's the thing. Sometimes they won't tell, the guy won't say anything, but they'll just like the fact that they have any communication with the girl. And I say, no, dude,
It's so
like,
creepy.
but that's what I'm telling you. What this is what they're doing. And I would say to that dude, you don't want to get used to like having women around that you're into that are not into you back. Like, as a dude, I didn't.
No, that stuff's gotta end at your like early 20s. I think it's creepy after that.
Well, it certainly is creepy, but I'm saying this is what a lot of dudes do. They get stuck in these scenarios, and then they torture themselves, and they'll say my least favorite expression of all, and they say something like, "I'd rather have her in my life as a friend than not at all." It's like,
Not at
dude,
all.
shut up! Like, stop that shit.
You're also stopping yourself. The man is stopping himself from finding someone he's supposed to be with.
Yes, it blocks it.
What you're telling me, because I hear this at work a lot, drives me crazy. Like, you could be, oh, I can't stand when people allow other people to drag them along. I can't stand it.
But the person who's being dragged along, it is their fault too for letting themselves be dragged along.
That's what I mean. They're allowing themselves to be dragged along because they're like projecting this fantasy possibility of being with someone, not pulling the trigger to try to make it happen. You know, maybe that person's in a relationship or something, but they're still like every day hanging out and having this fantasy in their mind that they could be together with this person, and they're not. If they stopped spending time with that person and maybe started dating, they'd find someone that they're supposed to be with. And I'd have to say that these men that you're talking about are generally one of the best men out there, and they're being strung along in a fantasy world of someone that they can't be with.
Well, the best men out there, that
Or
might
didn't
not be
try to be with.
Well, see, the problem with those guys is usually they struggle with a couple things. They struggle with masculine energy. And so these are the type of guys that will go to the women dating channels for men. And they'll go to all of their friends that are girls and say, please help me out. I like this girl. What should I do? And I was like, here's the thing. The guys who are in that scenario, usually they struggle being in their masculine energy. So I'd say, how is going to a woman going to help you with your masculine energy? It's probably not going to. But what could help you is getting with high value men that you really respect and are living the way you want to live, and you know that you become like the people you surround yourself with. So start upping up your game with even just your male friendships, like with dudes that can challenge each other, because steel sharpens steel. Guys who aren't going to be like little bitches to each other, but like, they'll call each other out, and the other person won't be like, oh no, you called me out, or your panties are in a bunch because you challenged me. It's like, no, dude, like that's what dudes are supposed to do for one another: challenge each other, help them to grow. And so that guy who's in that scenario, usually it's because he's not comfortable being the masculine person. He's not comfortable being assertive. He's not comfortable just like kind of being direct with what he wants. And the fact that he's stuck in a stupid friend zone, that's proof. It's proof that he's like willing to accept less than what he really wants. And like any dude who's really like mastered himself, he would never accept that. You don't accept that as a dude. And if that girl's not feeling the same way about you that you do about her, you go. You go, because she's literally blocking. She's blocking. Like, as long as your attention's on her, you're not open to any of the other possibilities that are out there. And it's just not going to do a damn good thing for you. And I'd say, and this is the other thing, men should value other male friendships way more than most, not ever all, but most of their female friendships. Because it's like, what do you do? What do you do with a girl who's a friend? What do you do? Like, what do you do with guys who are a friend?
Oh, we go hiking.
And these are also probably the same guys that would like to say, hey, let's go sneak off behind this tree, that they would probably do.
No.
They would not?
The guys I go hiking with, no.
Are they just friends?
Well, actually, they'll have girlfriends. That's probably why.
So, well, that's another discussion to be had. So they have girlfriends.
Sometimes the girls are there, sometimes they're not, but.
And so they go hiking with you in the woods, and sometimes their girlfriends aren't there.
Mm-hmm.
And now those girls are okay with that.
It's me. I'm a great person.
I don't know. I'm surprised a lot of those women, I bet, would be jealous about that.
I don't know. Actually, you know what happened recently? There is this guy, I met him through Instagram, and he has a really interesting Instagram. He like lives out of his van. He travels around South Jersey,
Oh,
and
van
it's
life.
van life, sunset, sunrise, sunset. I love sunset so much. Like as I was driving home to do this, I was like, I could have been watching the sunset somewhere.
Happy to help.
So anyway, last summer we were like, I spotted him somewhere in the woods somewhere, and it was me, him, and one of my friends, and we are all having a good time. And like we chat once in a while, and I'm always here to like talk to people. And out of nowhere, he took me off his Instagram. He took my friends off of his Instagram. I have two Instagrams, my private and public one. I was like, what the hell? So I was hiking with one of my friends and his girlfriend, like maybe a month ago, and I spotted his van, and I'm like, something's up with this guy. I don't know why he did that. I'm a nice person. I don't get in anyone's business. I don't talk politics, like I told you before. Nothing to offend anybody. So we were going back and forth, and we were trying to like make this like mushroom thing stuff we found the ground. And I went back to get my little alien. And I had to like walk far away from this van because I didn't want him to spot me. So don't you know, I decided to leave. I'm hungry. I didn't bring enough food, but I was also there for like 6 hours. So I'm driving back, and I get a message on Instagram. Was that you leaving? I'm like, shit. Yeah, that was me. And he's like, I have to be honest. I started to like you, and I knew this wouldn't be. And he's like, I just cut you out. I'm like, oh God.
Well,
Why?
Are you grateful he did it that way?
I
Or
think
did you want it to actually work with him?
No, I'm not interested in him. I would much rather have him tell me, because this has happened to me in the past, like, Danielle, I'm
Oh,
catching feelings for
this is a
you,
good subject here.
and I rather reel it back, and I know, it's not going to work or whatever. I'd rather him tell me instead of just cutting me out of his life.
I absolutely agree with that, because that's one of the last things we're going to talk about here.
Okay.
Ghosting. How is your metric on the ghosting? Because
I've
here's the
been
thing.
ghosted so many times.
You've been ghosted?
Yes.
All right, so there's several different kinds of ghosting, though, right? So they're in the very beginning where you've chatted just a little bit, and then you get ghosted. That is what it is. Like there is no explanation needed.
It
Okay.
happened. Yeah.
But I've been ghosted as well, like after like multiple sexual encounters.
Yes.
I wish those. I shouldn't want the closure. I shouldn't care, but I always respect it 1,000 times more if the woman were to say something like, because
This isn't working out.
Well, this was an interesting scenario. I was doing something, and this girl had a boyfriend, but she was like an E&M type thing, and so like I never had to do anything with him, but I was like a third person, and that was someone that ghosted me, and I was like, I wish you could just say, you can tell me the absolute truth. I'm not going to
Just
be
tell
mad
me.
about it.
Yes.
It's like, say, oh, like, I decided to turn you in for another third person, or I decided that whatever it was, it would have felt better to hear something, because I don't like it when you've actually had something go on together, and then they just
Most
go.
of the ghosting after sex that's happened to me, before the ghosting had happened, there were multiple times I heard about problems with the person I'm dating and their ex-wife or ex-girlfriend.
Oh, okay, so you think they went back?
They went back. Yes. I will be, if we're out and you're talking, I will listen to what you have to say, and I will take my own feelings out of it, and I'll tell you, like, listen, I think you need to work it out with your ex-wife, or like I'll say it. I'm like,
Right.
I don't think you're over your ex-wife.
So when you get ghosted, do you ever do the old multiple text thing? Because women are they're better at not doing that generally, where like
I'll
they're not
say
going to
like,
text more than
hey,
once usually.
I'll text twice maybe. The last
Yeah.
person that ghosted me, I didn't text at all.
So did you leave a text to be ignored, or there was just like you see each other and then that was it?
It was like the second time I slept at his house. I had a lot of fun. He like dropped me off my car and kissed me goodbye. That's what's so weird to me. You're gonna kiss me goodbye. Um, and then I didn't hear from him, but I remember him talking about his ex-wife a lot on the last date we went on. So,
That's probably
and
exactly what it was.
she was like leaving town. She was moving that week, and I was like, he's probably went back to his ex.
To me, that would be a red flag, though, from a woman's perspective. It's like
Yeah, huge red flag.
if you hear too much about like an ex-girlfriend or an ex-wife,
Yeah.
they're probably not over that person.
Yep.
9 times out of 10. Which, and I guess this would be a good thing to end on here. Like, what are some of your red flags out there that you have? And I forgot to ask you two things: red flags and things that you think you could have done better in relationships, or things that you look back on and say, I wish I could have done this better.
I wish that, I do wish that I talked about my wants and desires in the beginning, but I didn't necessarily know them. I wish that
That
I
makes it very
had
hard.
asked. Yeah, I wish I had asked for better clear what we were committing to. Because I was in a relationship. It was my last public relationship. That he told me not to post pictures of us because he got arrested for like tax fraud or something.
Huh.
And so I didn't, and then I finally did after like a long period of time, and then all these women came out of nowhere. So I do wish that I asked if we were exclusive. I don't think I should. So red flags. All right, disappearing. That's a huge red flag, but I've dealt with it. So many men disappear. Being inconsistent. I mean, being consistent is so sexy. I love it.
Is it always?
Yes.
Is it always sexy?
I'm analytical, so I'm watching like your behavior. You text me every morning at 7 o'clock. You text me every time at 1 p.m. You text me at 5 o'clock. All right, so it's already set in my brain.
You really like that? You really would like that?
No, I'm just saying if
texting.
That's what I'm watching. I'm watching you do that, and then all of a sudden you're not. I'm like, hey, you good? Something all right? Like, actually, this is what happened. How'd you know? I'm like, because I just watch. Even my friends, my mom or whoever. I'm like, hey, you're all right.
Well, Milan Kundera, he's an author from Czechoslovakia. He wrote a book called The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and he says in the beginning of every relationship, you're establishing the contract. So, like the way you treat someone in the beginning, if you stop doing those things, then you might be accused of being unloving later. So, like, don't be doing too much in the beginning that you wouldn't want to keep on doing.
Don't do too much of it. What are other red flags? A few red flags is bragging about your nieces and nephews, and then I ask you, oh, you love them so much, spend a lot of time with them. What are their birthdays? What are their favorite things? And you can't tell me anything. That's a huge red flag. You just use them as pawn in like making me think you like kids or something.
Which wouldn't be the right thing to say to you anyway.
Well, no, but still, I mean, if you got to back up things to me. Yep. Red flag, partying a lot. I don't think that's attractive. Not having a good relationship with your family, I think, can be a red flag. Doesn't necessarily mean it's always a red flag, but usually is a red flag. Not having any friends can sometimes be a red flag.
It can be. Well, I would say sometimes people who don't have a good relationship with their families, if they came from like a narcissistic family structure, it might not be the worst thing, but not too close with them.
My dad's like a true. It is, and you don't normally talk about these things at the beginning either. And usually, like, when you start dating someone, you're like, yeah, my parents, X, Y, and Z, but you're not like, oh my God, my dad's the worst. When people start like, you just start dating someone and they're like putting down people, I can't stand that.
You're dumping, emotional dumping.
Yes. What are some other big red flags? Probably giving too much attention to your phone. I can't stand that at all. But I think that's most people.
That's a hard one because most people are addicted to their phones now.
Yeah, and I can say this because I've had a phone since I was like 16 years old. I sleep next to it. That's like my best friend. So like when you start dating someone, it's like, but I'm also dating my cell phone too.
Yeah.
So I gotta kind of like spread up my space, but that's how you show someone they're important to you is when you put down the phone.
Face down or face up?
I usually put it face down because if you saw my phone, it goes off 24/7 and it can be rather annoying. And I have where you can read the messages. Like I could show you my phone, you could read all the messages. So it is like, I'll just keep staring at it.
There you go. I mean, the phone's
Um,
taken over people's hypothalamuses recently.
yes, it is.
It's like an extension of our hand.
It is. Yeah, I've been sleeping next to it since I was 16. So, well, I just had a really good one as a red flag, but now I forget what it was. Oh, I can't think. I'm not sure what the other one was.
Maybe it'll come to you. So I guess maybe we could wrap this up with things that you admit or think you could do better in relationships, or things that, maybe you could see now weren't the best types of things to be acting. You mentioned that wanting to be more clear about your intentions in the beginning
Yeah,
of what
be
you
more
wanted.
clear about
So
my wants and desires. Like, I want my boyfriend eventually turn into a husband, and if I had communicated that, I would have like knocked out maybe 20 guys I wasted my time with
right.
because they could not commit to something like that.
So you do want marriage, but just not kids.
Yeah.
That's an interesting combination.
Yep. That's me.
Okay.
Other things would be, I learned that if I was juggling multiple men, it was because I was not happy with myself.
I think that's actually a big one that a lot of women should probably hear.
Yes, wasn't happy with myself, couldn't handle being by myself, and I filled that void with multiple men. Yeah.
So, what do you think about this statement? I would say that most, not all, but most women, like when they're really into one guy, that's really the only guy they want. And it's
Yeah.
not, and it's mostly that way with dudes too, but not quite completely, I think. Because I think a guy could really be in love with a girl, but he still might want to just hook up with some person maybe he doesn't even care about.
And
But
women are the same way. I
do
mean,
you think so?
yes, because I can tell you that there was no way that I could have a healthy relationship. I could think that I was trying to have a healthy relationship while entertaining these other few men for fun.
Well, I think that's making the point though too. Like you admit that if you're really into a dude, maybe you shouldn't have, or you shouldn't have the other dudes around, I guess.
But I shouldn't have went on a dating app and met with men with intention of being exclusive and dating while still entertaining other men. It's like they
Yeah,
still had some sort of cord attached to me.
I can see that. Well, I think it blocks. Like when you're
Yes.
talking to too many people, it kind of blocks the connections with each person. Like you don't. There kind of does need to be a little bit of exclusivity without being technically exclusive for the actual development of a relationship to grow.
Yeah, it's
Like you got
true.
to spend time to
Yeah.
get like just dating forever. You just don't get to know someone that well doing that. Like you got to kind of dig in a little bit. You got to kind of go in deeper, so to speak, and that seems to be better.
Yeah, those are things that I didn't like about myself, but learning that about myself and then becoming spiritual and like closing that door.
So what would happen? Here's a hypothetical. If some dude says to you something like, Danielle, we should do this E&M thing that's going on right now, or this poly stuff. What would you say to that?
No, it's not my thing.
Okay, good. Because I think there are a lot of people that they don't, they think they can just do whatever. And I do think it affects women sometimes.
I think that if you have 50 people entertaining what you just said, that there might be 5 people out of the 50 that can not have real feelings for people they shouldn't. I think the the majority of people are going to have feelings for people they're not supposed to, and then it turns out to be a mess, or they have feelings for people they're not supposed to, and then this person can tell, and they might not, this person might not be saying anything. It's just like the dynamics just like not healthy when maybe there's a small percent actually works.
Right. I would say, I don't, like people can do what they want to do. But the
And
big
I have a lot of friends that do privately entertain this lifestyle. All of those friends that I have been with their significant other for a long time. I see it as a way to spice things up sexually in the relationship. It's not something they do all the time. They do it once in a while. But I'm under the understanding that nobody really knows it about that, like their relationship. Like nobody knows that this is, that it's something private that they do.
Right. I mean, as a guy, it would be troublesome if the woman's the one who approaches me about that into the relationship, because of what I would think is, oh,
It has all of them have been the woman, actually, besides my one friend, but that didn't work out.
see, I would say that's troublesome though. I would say, because maybe not always, but it would mean they think they're going to get something else outside that they're not quite getting in. And that's
how I feel. That's why people entertain it, because they're missing something. I mean, from my own experience, except that I wasn't openly, I was doing my own private, like I'm dating these 3 men or 2 men or whatever.
right. But also what you hear a lot in that community is something like, oh, you got to romanticize the jealousy, or you got to overcome the jealousy of people. And I say, jealousy is like an evolutionary thing that's supposed to be there. Like from a men's view, you're jealous.
Healthy jealousy.
Well, from a men's view, like biologically, evolutionarily, it's you want to make sure that you're the father of a kid, right? That was the reasoning for it, because if there's a woman who's going to be, say, maybe very, very promiscuous, the chances that you're going to be the father of that kid go down. And as a guy, you don't want to be. And this happens way more than you think. But there's a lot of guys who are raising kids that are not theirs.
Not theirs,
and they just don't know it. Because here's the thing. The kicker is doctors in the hospitals, they are legally not allowed to tell a dude if they discover it. The only way it would ever be discovered is if the guy initiates the paternity test afterwards.
Wow.
But there's times where, of course, that doesn't happen. And I don't know how the doctor finds it out, but sometimes they do. But they're not allowed to tell them. But to me, like, this is why romantic jealousy is a thing. Because as a guy, you don't want to be cucked like that, because that's what that is. You want to be the father of the children, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to some people, they say, oh, no, you shouldn't care about that. You shouldn't care if it's yours or not. It's like, of course you should care if it's your kids. Like, but that's what they're doing. They try to romanticize the jealousy. And back when I used to do like 12-step program stuff, there was this term called compersion, which is because jealousy used to be one of my biggest defects. And you'd have to kind of write about it and then talk about its opposite. And jealousy's opposite is compersion. Compersion is loving a person and caring about them regardless of who's giving them happiness and regardless of anything that's going on in their lives. You don't have to be the sole source of their pleasure. So it was a good exercise to do. But I found when I was doing that kind of stuff, the more I thought about my defects and shortcomings, the more emphasized they would become. So I learned the best way through them would be, you just own them. You accept it. You own it and say, you know what? Fuck it. I can be jealous sometimes, or fuck it, I can be this way sometimes. And you own it. And that actually helps you go through much better when you own it, as opposed to when you're fighting it. Like, oh no, I can't be jealous. I gotta let my girlfriend bang other dudes so I can learn how to not be jealous. It's like, no, get the fuck out of here. But that's kind of what they're thinking. That's literally what I hear someone say.
I
like,
actually see a lot of this in the spirituality like groups. I'm like,
well, it gets contorted, where that's where they bend it into.
Okay, whatever you guys want to do, you can do.
I mean, I've known girls who have been poly before, and they lived that life. But then all of a sudden, they meet a guy they really like, and then what do you know? They don't want to be poly anymore. I was like, oh, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, because they were just fulfilling voids. There was all these voids. Yeah.
Well, that's the biggest thing about it. Like, and if you read something like, I think there's a book called The Ethical Slut, or there's another one about E&M, and but they all talk about how it's like so important to fulfill your needs. But it's like, you know what? Not all needs should be fulfilled to every extent. Like, there's some growth and some challenge in overcoming some of that stuff. And you can't just give in to all of your whims of pleasure either. Like, that's not necessarily healthy for you to do it. But they think, oh, you can't deny yourself anything. If you want to go do it, go do it. But it's like, there's something immature about that to me, where
there's always some sort of string attached to anything that has pleasure attached to it.
Well, it's like there's a difference between pleasure and joy. Like, joy comes from within. Pleasure comes from the outside. If you're looking for something pleasure-seeking, if you're acting like Jada Pinkett Smith for example, that's a problem. Like, that's just emotional. Like, you're trying to get something from August that if you really just didn't want to be with Will and work out things with him, it's like to freaking end it and go on. But
Yeah.
but if you think there's going to be fulfillment at the end of another dick somewhere, that's probably not the case.
Yep.
It's probably something internal. And the same can be held true for dudes too. Like, if they're just screwing their way through everything, like, that's, it can be fun for a minute, but it's not going to be something that's ultimately too fulfilling. Ultimately, what would be fulfilling is, like, you get a girl that you really like, you really love, etc., and you work on shit with her. That's ultimately what I would think is more fulfilling.
The majority of the time, because some people, they just can't do that. They don't want that.
No, they don't want that, but that's, they can do what they want.
Yeah.
But what I would caution dudes is, and this is why I even talk about it, dudes, the woman can talk them into it in some of these cases. It's like, dude, you don't have to do that. Like, if that girl's pushing that so hard, it's like, is that really a girl you really want to be with? Because
or is it something you really want? Do you really want to do this? Or is it just because you want to make her happy? That's like the whole buying the engagement ring thing.
Yeah. I would say you don't. There's a term, it's called enlightened self-interest, where it says you can best help others when you help yourself first. And that was a concept I didn't get for a long time. But it's like, you can't pour from an empty cup kind of thing. Like, you got to take care of yourself. Make sure your needs are met, because it's not really anyone else's responsibility to meet your own needs. You can tell people how you'd like to be treated. That's also true. And you can tell people, like, what you expect in a relationship. That's also true. But then it comes down to the other person. It's like, well, are they going to adhere to what your wishes are? Because, and it gets real simple at that point. If you tell someone your wishes and they continually don't do them, it's like, how much do they really care about you? And sometimes it's people, I think, especially with narcissistic type people, they can't. Like, you can tell them your boundaries left and right, but
that doesn't serve them proper.
no, they can fake it for a minute, right? Like, if you cut them
Yeah.
off or something, they can do the old love bombing Hoover stuff. They can try to act nice to kind of get you back in, to Hoover you in. But ultimately, they are who they are, and it's too much work for them to pretend and to actually try to adhere to someone else's boundaries. Eventually, they're just going to be that abusive person. Like, if that's what they are, that's who they innately are, that's who they're going to be. And it's too much work for them to stop it. So I've noticed that's why you got really just go no contact with those kinds of people.
Yes, no contact at all.
Absolutely. So I guess, is there anything else you wanted to touch on here before we sign this off?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, I didn't want to took up a lot of your time already, but I appreciate it for you coming on. It's probably very informative for a lot of people. I think we touched on a lot of good things too. So thanks very much for coming on.
You're welcome.
All right,
I'll message you later.
Sounds very good. Have a
Bye.
good one.